The rain was falling softly outside, tapping on the glass windows of a small grocery store. The sky was gray and the streets looked empty. Inside the store, bright lights glowed over the shelves stacked with bread, milk, and fruits. The place was quiet, only the soft hum of the refrigerators and the occasional sound of the cash register breaking the silence. Behind the counter stood David, a cashier who had worked here for many years. He was not a rich man, not a man of fame, but people in the town knew him for his calm nature. His uniform was simple, his smile even simpler, but there was something warm about the way he greeted every customer. He was the kind of person most people ignored, yet without him the store would feel empty. David had seen all types of people walk through those doors. Happy families, busy workers, tired parents, and even people who came in just to escape the rain for a while. For David, every day felt almost the same. Scan the items, smile politely, say thank you, and wait for the next customer. To him, it was just another ordinary day. Or at least that was what he thought. The bell above the door chimed. David looked up and saw a woman enter. Her name was Sarah, though David did not know it yet. She walked slowly, her shoulders bent a little under the weight of life. In her hand, she carried a small, worn-out wallet. At her side was a little girl no older than 7. The girl's eyes were bright, full of innocence, holding a tiny stuffed toy with faded colors. The mother's eyes, however, told a different story. They were tired, heavy, and full of worry. She wore a coat that looked too thin for the rainy weather, and her shoes squeaked as she walked across the wet floor. She did not look around much, as if afraid that someone might notice her. She went straight to the shelves, choosing items with careful hands. David noticed the way she walked, the way her fingers touched the price tags again and again before she picked something up. He had seen this before, the hesitation of someone who was counting every coin in their head. He knew what it meant when a customer placed items in the cart and then quietly put them back, as if they were too heavy, not in weight, but in cost. The little girl tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Mom," she whispered softly, "can we get cookies?" Sarah stopped for a moment. She looked at the cookies, then at her daughter's hopeful face. She pressed her lips together and shook her head gently. "Not today, sweetie," she said, her voice calm but hiding a quiet sadness. The girl didn't argue. She only held her toy closer and kept walking beside her mother. David's eyes followed them from behind the counter. Something in his chest stirred. He had seen many customers buy big bags of snacks, drinks, and things they didn't really need. But this woman, she was choosing only the very basics: bread, milk, some fruit, a small pack of rice. Things meant for survival, not for comfort. As the minutes passed, Sarah slowly filled a small basket. It was not much, yet every item seemed carefully chosen, as if each one carried the weight of a decision. She walked to the checkout line, her daughter holding onto her hand. There was no one else waiting. The store felt even quieter now, with the rain outside making a soft background sound. David gave his usual smile. "Good evening," he said gently, scanning the items one by one. The machine beeped softly with each scan, the sound echoing louder than usual in the empty store. Sarah forced a small smile back, though her eyes looked nervous. She clutched her wallet tightly, her fingers pale from pressing it so hard. She kept her head down, watching the items being placed into bags. Her daughter peeked up at David with curious eyes, but Sarah avoided his gaze. The final total appeared on the screen. Sarah opened her wallet slowly. Inside were a few crumpled bills and some coins. She counted once, then again. Her lips trembled slightly, David noticed. He had seen this moment before, the silent battle between pride and need. The mother's shoulders stiffened, as if she wanted the ground to open and swallow her whole. She whispered to herself, barely audible, "It's not enough." Her daughter looked up, confused. "Mom, is everything okay?" Sarah forced another smile, but this time it did not reach her eyes. "Yes, honey," she said softly, though her voice cracked a little. David's hand hovered near the register. He pretended not to notice, but inside his heart tightened. He knew something was about to happen, something important. The rain outside grew heavier, drumming against the glass like 1,000 tiny fists. The world felt smaller, quieter, as if the store itself was holding its breath. Sarah's eyes flickered between the groceries and her wallet. She knew she had to make a choice. Should she put some items back? Should she walk away? Or should she risk embarrassment and admit she could not pay? Her fingers shook as she slowly closed her wallet, holding back tears. David watched in silence. This was no longer an ordinary day. This was the beginning of a story neither of them would ever forget. The screen on the cash register glowed with the total. The number was small compared to what many customers spent every day, yet for Sarah it felt like a mountain too high to climb. She stared at the glowing digits as if they were mocking her. Her hand trembled while holding the wallet. Inside, the money was not enough. A few crumpled notes, a handful of coins, nothing more. She counted once, twice, hoping maybe she had made a mistake. But no. No matter how she arranged the coins, the truth did not change. David, the cashier, stood quietly behind the counter. He didn't rush her. He didn't tap the counter impatiently like other cashiers sometimes did. He simply waited, his eyes calm, though inside he already guessed what was happening. The little girl tugged at her mother's coat. "Mom," she whispered, her voice so small, "did we get the bread?" Sarah blinked fast, trying to steady her voice. "Yes, honey, we did." She lifted her chin a little, pretending everything was fine. But inside her chest a storm raged. She thought about the long day behind her. The extra hours at work, the tired walk in the rain, the careful way she had planned this shopping trip. She had even skipped her own lunch to save a little more. And yet here she was, standing under the bright supermarket lights, realizing she couldn't afford the most basic groceries for her daughter. Her cheeks warmed with shame. She looked around the store. Empty aisles, no other customers, just the quiet sound of rain outside. For a moment, she almost felt grateful no one else was here to see this. No one, except David. David scanned the last item and looked at her gently. "Take your time," he said in a low, steady voice. His words were simple, but the kindness in them pierced through the silence. Sarah's throat tightened. She nodded, though she did not feel okay. Her daughter's eyes fell on the small pack of cookies they had passed earlier. The little girl didn't say anything this time. She only pressed her stuffed toy against her chest and kept her eyes down, as if she already understood the truth her mother didn't want to admit. Sarah took a deep breath. She reached into the basket and slowly pulled out a carton of milk. Her hand shook as she placed it aside. "I'll put this back," she whispered. David said nothing. He only watched, his heart heavy. She picked up another item, a small bag of fruit, and set it aside as well. The basket grew lighter, but the weight in her chest grew heavier. Each item she removed felt like a piece of her dignity falling onto the cold floor. Her daughter frowned, whispering, "But Mom, I like apples." Sarah's heart cracked. She forced another smile, the kind that hides pain. "Next time, sweetheart," she said softly. David looked at the girl's face, then at Sarah's trembling hands. He wanted to say something, but he held back. He knew too well that pride was fragile, and words could sometimes hurt more than silence. The store felt even quieter now. The beeping of the scanner no longer sounded ordinary. It felt like the ticking of a clock, counting down to something neither of them could escape. Sarah placed a loaf of bread back, then a pack of rice. Her daughter's little eyes followed each movement, her hope fading piece by piece. Finally, Sarah looked at what remained in the basket. Just a few small items. Bread, milk, fruit, all gone. Only the cheapest basics were left. David's chest tightened. He thought about all the people who walked in earlier that week with carts overflowing. Snacks, drinks, luxuries they didn't even need. And now here was a mother, breaking her heart just to buy food for her child. Sarah opened her wallet again, counting the coins one more time. Her fingers shook so badly the coins clattered onto the counter. She scrambled to pick them up, her face red with embarrassment. David bent down quickly to help her. Their hands almost touched, and for a moment Sarah froze. She whispered, "I'm sorry." David shook his head. "No need to be sorry," he said quietly, handing the coin back. Sarah's eyes stung with tears, but she blinked them away. She didn't want to cry here. Not in front of her daughter, not in front of a stranger. She held her head high even as her soul felt small. The little girl tugged her sleeve again. "Mom, are we going to eat tonight?" Sarah's lips trembled. She pulled her daughter close and kissed her hair. "Yes, baby. We'll eat." But deep down, she wasn't sure how. David's hand hovered near the register, ready to make a choice. His mind was racing, but his face stayed calm. He didn't want to embarrass her. He didn't want to hurt her pride. But he also knew something had to be done. The rain outside grew heavier, drumming louder against the windows. It was as if the world itself was echoing Sarah's struggle, the storm outside matching the storm in her heart. David's eyes met Sarah's for a brief second. In that glance, he saw everything: her exhaustion, her fear, her determination, her love for her child. This was no simple customer. This was a mother fighting silently, fighting to protect the most precious thing in her life. Sarah swallowed hard, ready to put back the last few items, even if it meant leaving almost empty-handed. Her fingers touched the bread once more, and that was the moment. David knew he could not stay silent any longer. The struggle was reaching its breaking point. Something was about to change. The store lights felt brighter now, almost too bright. Sarah stood at the counter with her basket half empty, the bread, the fruit, the milk all removed piece by piece. What remained looked so little, almost nothing compared to what she had dreamed of carrying home for her daughter. Her fingers brushed over the last loaf of bread. Her heart ached as if every item she touched was a choice between survival and shame. She thought of her daughter's hungry eyes. She thought of tomorrow, of the days after, and of the fear that there might not be enough. David, the cashier, watched quietly. He had seen people fight over money before. He had seen anger, frustration, even shouting in this very store. But Sarah was different. She did not fight with words. She fought in silence, her pride forcing her to stay calm, even as her world crumbled inside. "Mom," the little girl whispered, her small voice shaking. "We still have dinner, right?" Sarah forced her lips to curl into a smile. "Of course, sweetheart," she answered, though her voice cracked at the edges. Her words were meant to comfort, but they sounded hollow, like paper in the wind. David's hand rested on the register. He scanned the final item and the machine gave a soft beep. The sound echoed like a drumbeat in the empty store. The screen displayed the total again. For Sarah, it was a number too large, a wall too high. She opened her wallet one last time. The same crumpled notes, the same cold coins. Her hands trembled as she counted slowly, as if maybe this time the money would magically increase. But reality did not bend. The truth stared back at her, unchanging. Her breath grew shallow. She whispered under her breath, "It's still not enough." The little girl looked up, her innocent eyes searching her mother's face for answers. She didn't understand numbers. She didn't understand totals. She only understood the growl in her stomach and the way her mother's hands shook. Sarah swallowed hard and pushed the bread aside. "I'll leave this too," she said softly, almost ashamed to hear her own voice. David's heart sank. He saw the girl's face fall when the bread was moved. He couldn't ignore the sadness in her eyes. A child should never have to worry about food. For a long moment, the three of them stood in silence. The rain outside pounded against the glass, each drop like a ticking clock. Time felt heavy, pressing down on all of them. Finally, David spoke. His voice was gentle, careful. "It's okay. You don't have to." He stopped himself. He wanted to say more, but he knew words could be dangerous. Words could wound pride, and he could see Sarah's pride holding her up like the last fragile wall. Sarah shook her head. "No," she whispered. "I can't take what I can't pay for." She started to gather the little that was left. Her hands were quick, almost desperate, as if she wanted to escape the store before the tears in her eyes betrayed her. But David didn't move. His fingers hovered near the register, his mind racing. He had a choice to make. He could stay silent, let her walk out with less than she needed. Or he could act and risk hurting her pride in the process. The little girl tugged her mother's sleeve again. "Mom, I'm hungry," she said softly, her words simple but sharper than any blade. Sarah froze. Her shoulders tensed, and for the first time a tear slid down her cheek. She quickly wiped it away, hoping David hadn't seen. But he had, and in that moment something inside David shifted. He wasn't just a cashier anymore. He wasn't just a man behind a counter. He was a witness to a battle no one else would ever see. The battle of a mother trying to protect her child from hunger and shame. The conflict rose inside him like a storm. His heart told him to act, to help, to stop this quiet tragedy. But his mind reminded him of rules, of policies, of the way society looked at kindness with suspicion. Would Sarah accept help? Or would she see it as pity? Another reminder of her struggle. David's chest tightened. He had made decisions in this store before. Simple ones like refunds or discounts. but never a decision like this, never one that could change the course of a life. Sarah closed her wallet with a snap, as if sealing away her dignity. She whispered to her daughter, "Come on, let's go." Her voice broke, heavy with defeat, but before she could move, David's hand pressed the button on the register. The machine beeped again, louder this time. The screen flashed, paid. Sarah froze. Her eyes widened. What did you do?" she asked, her voice trembling. David looked at her calmly, though inside his heart raced. "It's taken care of," he said softly. The words hung in the air, heavy and unbelievable. Sarah shook her head. "No, I can't. I don't want charity." Her pride screamed against it, her voice filled with panic. David's eyes softened. "This isn't charity," he said. "It's just food, and food should never be out of reach." The little girl's eyes lit up, her hands clutching the stuffed toy tighter. She looked at her mother, then at David, sensing something important had just happened, even if she didn't fully understand. Sarah's chest rose and fell with rapid breaths. Her pride fought with her relief. Her shame battled with her gratitude. The storm in her heart had reached its peak. David didn't push her. He didn't lecture, didn't explain. He simply bagged the groceries with steady hands, his expression calm, his actions speaking louder than any words ever could. The conflict was no longer silent. It was alive, heavy, and unshakable. Something had shifted forever in that small, quiet store. And for Sarah, the hardest question remained. Should she accept this kindness? Or walk away, empty-handed but unbroken? The night was not done testing her yet. For a moment, the store felt frozen in time. The screen of the register still glowed with the word paid, its bright letters cutting through the silence. Sarah stood still, her hands clutching her thin wallet, her heart pounding so loud it drowned out even the rain outside. She could not believe what had just happened. Her first thought was that she had misheard. Her second thought was that the machine had glitched. But when she looked up and saw David, calm and steady behind the counter, she realized the truth. He had done it. He had paid. Her breath caught in her throat. "No," she whispered, shaking her head slowly. "You can't. I can't let you do this." David's eyes held hers, firm but kind. "It's done," he said simply, his voice quiet but unshakable. Sarah's pride flared inside her chest. Every part of her wanted to scream, "I don't need help. I can manage. I'm not weak." She wanted to push the groceries away, walk out and prove she still had control of her life. But another voice, smaller, softer, whispered back, "What about your daughter?" Her daughter tugged her sleeve again, looking at the bags with wide, hungry eyes. "Mom, can we take them, please?" The innocence in her voice cut deeper than any blade. Sarah's lips trembled. She wanted to say no, to stand tall and protect her dignity. But when she looked at her little girl, she saw the truth. Pride could not feed her child. Pride could not fill an empty stomach. Her knees felt weak. She turned back to David, her face burning with shame. "Why?" she asked. Her voice cracked as the question slipped out. "Why would you do this for me? You don't even know me." David paused for a moment, as if choosing his words carefully. Then he said, "Because no one should leave this store hungry. Not while I'm standing here." The words were simple, but they struck deep. Sarah blinked back tears. She shook her head again. I can't accept this. It feels wrong." David leaned slightly forward, his voice still soft but now carrying weight. "It's not wrong. Feeding a child is never wrong. Helping someone in need is never wrong." Her heart pounded harder. The walls she had built around herself, the walls of pride, of independence, of pretending everything was fine, began to crack. And in those cracks something else entered. Warmth. But still she hesitated. "I'll pay you back," she said quickly, almost desperately. "I promise I'll find a way. I'll bring the money to you tomorrow." David shook his head gently. "You don't owe me anything. Take care of your daughter. That's enough payment." The words hit her harder than before. She felt tears rising again, but this time she didn't wipe them away. She let them fall hot against her cheeks. Her pride was no longer enough to stop them. Her daughter looked between them, sensing the heaviness of the moment but not fully understanding it. All she knew was that the food was hers now, and for the first time that evening she smiled. Sarah's voice dropped to a whisper. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," David replied. "Just go home, eat, rest." For a long time Sarah stood there, torn between two paths. One path was to push the bags back, walk out into the rain and keep her pride intact but leave her daughter hungry. The other path was to accept this act of kindness, to let down her guard, and carry home the food her child so desperately needed. Finally, her trembling hands reached for the bags. She lifted them carefully as if they were made of glass. The decision had been made. Relief and shame twisted together inside her chest. She hated that she needed help, but she loved her daughter more than her pride. And for her daughter, she would accept this gift. David gave her a small smile, not one of pity, but of understanding. "You're not alone," he said quietly, almost as if speaking to himself as much as to her. Sarah met his eyes, and in that moment, something passed between them, an unspoken truth. She realized he wasn't helping her because he thought she was weak. He was helping her because he believed in something bigger, that humanity was meant to stand together, not apart. Her daughter squeezed her hand tightly, her face bright with happiness now that dinner was certain. Sarah looked down at her child and felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The rain outside had softened, the storm easing as if the world itself approved of the decision. Sarah whispered, "Thank you." 2 small words, but they carried the weight of her entire soul. David nodded once, his face calm. "Take care of her. That's all that matters." As Sarah turned to leave, the bags heavy in her hands but her heart strangely lighter, she knew this night would never leave her. She had entered the store with fear, shame, and emptiness. She was leaving with food, with hope, and with a lesson that would stay with her forever. The decision was made, and it had changed everything. The heavy bag swayed in Sarah's hands as she stepped toward the door. The bell above the entrance jingled softly, a sound that usually meant nothing. But tonight it carried the weight of a choice that had changed everything. Her daughter walked beside her, clutching her stuffed toy tightly. For the little girl, the story was simple. They would eat tonight. But for Sarah, it was much more complicated. She felt relief, yes, but also shame. Pride still scratched at her heart, whispering that she had failed, that she had needed a stranger to step in. She turned back for a second, her eyes meeting David's. He stood at the counter as calm as ever, already preparing for the next customer who wasn't even there. He gave her a small nod like it was nothing, as if paying for someone's groceries was no different from scanning a barcode. That small nod unsettled Sarah. Why did he look so calm, so sure? Most people who gave charity looked proud of themselves, waiting for thanks. But David didn't. He didn't even act like he had done something important. Sarah carried the bags out into the rainy street, her thoughts racing. The walk home was quiet, except for the sound of raindrops hitting the ground. The little girl skipped in small puddles, giggling softly, her worries already forgotten. But Sarah's mind replayed the scene again and again. The register flashing paid, David's calm eyes. His words, "Take care of your daughter." That's enough. Why would a man like him do this? That night in their small apartment, Sarah prepared a warm meal. It wasn't a feast, but it was enough. The smell of bread and rice filled the air, and for the first time in days, the apartment felt alive. Her daughter laughed, crumbs on her lips, joy shining in her eyes. Sarah sat quietly at the table, watching her child eat. The food filled her stomach, but it did not quiet her thoughts. She could not forget the man at the store. He didn't know me. He didn't ask for anything, so why? She decided she needed answers. The next evening, Sarah returned to the store. This time she had a few more coins saved from her long shift at work. The bell chimed again as she entered, and once more David stood behind the counter, scanning items for another customer. When the customer left, Sarah walked up, her heart pounding. "Excuse me," she began, her voice low. David looked up, his calm eyes meeting hers. "Good evening." She placed the coins on the counter.
"This is for yesterday," she said firmly.
"I told you I'd pay you back." David glanced at the coins, then back at her. He pushed them gently toward her again. "I told you, you don't owe me anything." Her cheeks burned. "But I can't just take it. It's not right." David's expression stayed steady. "It was never about the money." Sarah frowned. "Then what was it about?" For a moment, David didn't answer. He looked past her, at the shelves, the rain sliding down the windows, the empty aisles of the store. Finally, he said, "It's about humanity." The word hung in the air, heavy and strange. Sarah blinked. "Humanity?" David nodded slowly. "I've seen people spend hundreds here without a thought. And I've seen people struggle for bread. I can't change the whole world. But I can choose what kind of human I want to be. And I choose this. Sarah stood frozen. His words struck her harder than she expected. He leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice. You think this was just about you? But it wasn't. I've done it before. For others, a man last winter who couldn't afford milk, an old woman who came with empty hands hoping for kindness. You're not the first, and you won't be the last. Sarah's breath caught. A shiver ran through her. She had thought this was a one-time act of pity, a random moment of charity, but now she saw the truth. David wasn't just a cashier. He was something more. Her voice shook. Why would you keep doing this? Don't you lose money? Don't you get in trouble? David's lips curved in the faintest smile. Maybe, but trouble is nothing compared to hunger. Money can be replaced. Dignity cannot. Sarah stared at him, speechless. For years she had carried the belief that kindness was rare, that people cared only for themselves. Yet here stood a man proving her wrong. Not with grand speeches or flashy actions, but with simple, quiet choices repeated again and again. Her heart softened, her shame easing just a little. This wasn't charity. This was conviction. A belief that helping others was what made people truly human. For the first time, she let herself smile back. Thank you, she said again, but this time the words carried new meaning. David only nodded. Take care of her, he said once more, pointing gently toward her daughter who waited at the door with her toy. That night, as Sarah tucked her child into bed, her mind echoed with David's words. It's about humanity. She realized the twist of her story was not just that a cashier had paid for her food. The twist was bigger. This wasn't a one-time miracle. It was part of something larger, a quiet force of good hidden in plain sight. And maybe, just maybe, she could carry that force forward in her own life. The world had looked dark to her for so long. But now, as some days passed, yet the memory of the grocery store lingered in Sarah's mind like an echo she could not silence. She replayed every detail again and again, the sound of the register beeping, the glow of the word paid, and David's calm voice saying, "It's about humanity." At first, she thought of it as a single act of kindness, a rare event in a hard world. But the more she remembered his words, the more she realized it wasn't rare for him. He had done it before and he would do it again. That truth shook her. Sarah had grown used to believing the world was cold. Life had taught her that people looked after themselves first. Neighbors closed their doors, strangers walked past without noticing. Even friends disappeared when times grew hard. She had built her life around that belief. Trust no one, ask for nothing, survive alone. But David's actions cracked that belief. He didn't even know her name, yet he chose to step in. He didn't ask for thanks, didn't boast, didn't expect anything in return. He simply acted because in his mind, helping was the right thing to do. And that made Sarah wonder, what if humanity's true strength wasn't power, or wealth, or cleverness, but compassion? One evening, as Sarah walked home with her daughter, she noticed a stray cat shivering under a bench. Her daughter stopped, pointing. "Mom, it's cold." "The kitty looks hungry," Sarah hesitated. Normally, she would have walked on, telling herself they had their own problems to worry about. But tonight was different. She remembered David's steady eyes, his words. Without thinking too hard, she reached into her bag and pulled out a small piece of bread. She placed it near the cat. The animal sniffed it cautiously, then began to eat. Her daughter's face lit up. "You helped it, Mom." Sarah smiled faintly, a warmth blooming in her chest. For the first time, she felt what David might have felt. That strange, quiet power that comes from easing another's struggle, even if only for a moment. Later that week, Sarah overheard her daughter at school. The little girl was telling a friend, "My mom and a nice man at the store made sure we had food." People can be good. The words hit Sarah like a wave. She realized her daughter had learned something precious, not just that they had eaten, but that kindness was real. And that lesson might last longer than the memory of hunger. Curiosity grew inside Sarah. Who was David, really? Why did he live this way, quietly helping strangers? The next time she went to the store, she watched him closely. She noticed the small details others missed. The way he gave an extra smile to the old man who counted coins too slowly. The way he slipped a discount quietly into the bill of a struggling young couple. The way he never rushed anyone, no matter how long the line was. It wasn't just about her. It was about everyone who crossed his path. That was the revelation. David wasn't trying to change the whole world with grand gestures. He was shaping the world in small, steady ways, one person at a time. And in those small acts, he created something bigger than himself. That night, Sarah lay awake thinking. She asked herself questions she had never dared before. What if kindness is humanity's true weapon? What if survival isn't just about strength but about compassion? What if every small act is a thread in a much larger web of hope? For the first time in years, she felt something she thought she had lost: belief. Belief in people. Belief in humanity. Her daughter climbed into bed beside her, whispering, "Mom, I like that man at the store. He was like a hero." Sarah hugged her tightly, tears in her eyes. "Yes, sweetheart," she whispered back. "He is," but inside she knew the truth was even greater. Heroes weren't only in books or movies. Heroes were ordinary people who refused to look away when someone else was in need. Heroes were humans who chose compassion, even when no one was watching. And maybe, just maybe, she could be one too. The world outside was still hard. Bills still came. Work was still tiring. The future still uncertain. But something inside Sarah had shifted. She no longer saw herself as just a struggling mother in a cold city. She saw herself as part of something bigger, a chain of kindness, invisible but unbreakable, connecting one human heart to another. That was David's gift. Not just food, but hope. Not just groceries, but a reminder of what it means to be human. One evening, Sarah returned to the store again. She didn't need to buy much, just a few small things. As David handed her the bag, she paused. "Do you ever wonder," she asked quietly, "why you do this? Why you keep helping?" David looked thoughtful. Then he smiled faintly. "Because one day I might be the one who needs help. And if I can show kindness now, maybe kindness will come back when I need it." Sarah nodded slowly, her heart swelling. That was it. That was humanity's strength, not wealth, not power, but the circle of compassion, passed forward from one to another. She walked out of the store that night with her daughter, feeling lighter than she had in years. For the first time, Sarah no longer felt like a shadow moving through life. She felt human again, connected, alive, and part of something greater. And that was the revelation. Humans are not defined by their struggles. They are defined by how they rise above them, not through force but through kindness, and in that truth, humanity will always endure. The grocery bags rustled softly in Sarah's hands as she stepped out of the store for what felt like the 100th time. But tonight was different. The air smelled fresher, the night sky clearer, even though the rain still clung to the streets in shining puddles. Her daughter walked beside her, swinging her stuffed toy happily. To the little girl, the story was simple. They had food and people could be kind. But for Sarah, the story was bigger. It was about survival, pride, compassion, and something she hadn't felt in years: hope. At home, Sarah placed the groceries on the counter. The room was quiet except for the small hum of the fridge. She looked at the bags and thought of David, standing so calmly behind the counter, never once asking for thanks. He had become part of her story now, whether she wanted it or not. Her daughter's laughter echoed in the small apartment as she pretended to feed her stuffed toy cookies. Sarah smiled softly, but her mind was far away. She thought of all the nights she had cried in silence, believing the world had no kindness left. And now she had been proven wrong. That night, as she tucked her daughter into bed, the little girl whispered, "Mom, he was like a superhero, right?" Sarah paused. She looked at her daughter's innocent face glowing in the dim light. "Yes," she said gently, "he was. But not the kind you see in cartoons. Real heroes look different." Her daughter frowned.
"How do they look?"
Sarah kissed her forehead. "Sometimes they wear uniforms. Sometimes they stand behind counters. Sometimes they smile when no one else notices. Real heroes help quietly." Her daughter nodded sleepily, hugging her toy. Soon she drifted off, safe and warm. But Sarah couldn't sleep. She sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. Her thoughts grew heavy, yet her heart felt lighter than it had in years. David's words replayed in her mind. It's about humanity. She thought of her own life. The struggles, the loneliness, the walls she had built. For so long she had believed that being strong meant never needing anyone, never showing weakness. But maybe she had been wrong. Maybe real strength wasn't about carrying every burden alone. Maybe it was about letting others carry some of the weight too. That realization shook her, but it also healed her. Days turned into weeks. Life was still not easy. Bills still came. Hours at work were still long, and sometimes the coins in her wallet still weren't enough. But something inside Sarah had changed. She no longer walked with her head down, afraid of the world. She walked with her chin a little higher, because she knew she wasn't alone anymore. She began noticing small chances to pass the kindness forward. She gave her seat to an old woman on the bus. She shared her umbrella with a stranger in the rain. She even began saving a little each week, not just for herself, but in case she met someone who needed help as badly as she once had. Her daughter noticed too. "Mom," she said one day, "we're like him now." "We're helping," Sarah smiled. "Yes, sweetheart. That's how it works. One person helps another, and then it keeps going." And just like that, the circle of kindness grew. Back at the grocery store, David remained the same, quiet, steady, unnoticed by most. Customers came and went, barely remembering his face. But Sarah now understood what they couldn't see. He wasn't just scanning items. He was scanning lives, watching, waiting, and choosing when to act. His uniform was plain, his work ordinary, but his actions were extraordinary. One evening, Sarah walked in again. She didn't need much, just some milk and bread. When David handed her the bag, she paused and said softly, "You changed more than one night. You changed how I see people." David gave the same small smile. "I didn't change anything. Humanity was always there. You just had to see it again." Sarah left with tears in her eyes, not of sadness, but of gratitude. That night, as she walked home under the streetlights, her daughter skipping ahead, Sarah felt a thought rise inside her like a flame. Maybe this is what truly makes us human, not power, not wealth, not strength, but compassion. The simple act of seeing another's pain and choosing to ease it. She realized then that humanity's story was not written only in history books or grand victories. It was written in moments like these, small, quiet, and unseen by the world, yet powerful enough to change it. The story closed not with thunder, but with a whisper. Heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear cashier uniforms. Sometimes they stand quietly behind a counter, pressing a button that says paid. And sometimes that small act of kindness is enough to remind the world that humans will always rise.